Quick reminder, early bird pricing for SHRM 26 ends February 13th. Join your HR community in Orlando and save when you register early. Learn more at shrm.org/SHRM26 early bird. All one word. That's shrm.org/SHRM26 early bird.
What is the cost of not investing in well-being? And you're either paying on the front end to build resilience and sustainability, or you're paying on the back end in fragmented, expensive ways.
In today's fast paced world of work, you're likely juggling those deadlines, moving projects to the finish line, and feeling the pressure to always be on. While you're burning the candle at both ends, it's easy to overlook your own personal well being until that exhaustion starts to take a toll. Of course, there's no one size fits all way to solve stress or burnout. That's why we're here. If it were a simple solution, we wouldn't be here talking about it. Every individual, every team, every organization faces unique demands, but there are proven strategies that can really help. And one of them gaining traction is mindfulness. And today we're joined by Holly Rogers, a psychiatrist who spent over 2 decades at Duke University's counseling services. Holly also co founded the Mindfulness Institute for emerging adults, where she has developed a proven evidence based mindfulness curriculum. She'll guide us through the impact of mindfulness in the workplace, along with some frameworks you can start using today. So, Holly, welcome to All Things Work.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. And we know this is going to be a really great episode, almost like therapeutic, as I like to say with some of our guests. So, Holly, we have some interesting data here with us from a recent SHRM research report. It's the highly anticipated 2026 State of the Workplace report. It was just launched in January. Workers who were surveyed in this specifically identified stress and burnout among the top workplace needs demanding attention from leaders. So we'll explore how mindfulness can really make a difference in just a moment. But first, let's use another statistic from the report to discuss what happens when well-being is not adequately supported by the workplace. So for those surveyed workers who felt their organization is really not effective at addressing workplace needs, 24% stated they are likely or very likely to leave. Now, this isn't super surprising. Burnout can lead to people not wanting to stay at their position. So, Holly, besides losing talented workers, what are some of the other serious consequences organizations might face when worker well-being is overlooked or just not being prioritized?
And I'm not at all surprised about your SHRM data. I know that Deloitte does a similar workplace well-being study each year, and they look at Gen Z and millennials, the younger folks in the workforce. And Gen Z in particular is demanding that their workplaces take this seriously. And many of them are saying they're not willing to work somewhere where their well-being is not considered. So it is really important. And I think the consequences of not attending to well-being are more dramatic and problematic for workplaces than perhaps most people realize. So, for one, the productivity drain is just enormous. When people are chronically stressed or burnt out, they're physically present, but they're cognitively elsewhere. We call this presenteeism as opposed to absenteeism. Their body is present, but their mind may not be. So you've got employees sitting at their desk for hours, but maybe operating on 60% capacity. They're making more errors, takes them longer to complete tasks, they need more supervision. Another thing that happens when our well-being is not attended to is our decision-making deteriorates. Stress narrows our cognitive bandwidth. When people are overwhelmed, they default to reactive. So in mindfulness, we talk about being reactive versus being responsive. And reactive is when you're like emotionally triggered and you just do or say the first thing that comes to mind without taking a pause and responding more thoughtfully. we make better decisions when we're responsive and not reactive. And this is so important for frontline employees, but also managers and executives. Team dynamics suffer when the workplace is stressed, right? Stressed people, they don't collaborate well, they're irritable, they're snippy, they take things personally. And of course, all the data shows us that healthcare costs climb when workplace well-being is ignored. Chronic stress is linked to cardiovascular disease, weakened immune systems, anxiety, depression. I mean, the list goes on. And there's a lot of data showing that organizations with poor well-being have higher insurance premiums and increased claims, more medical leave. But one of the things that I see that it's really insidious, and I think it's really important. It's like normalized dysfunction, right?
Yes.
So when well-being is just chronically ignored or deprioritized, the organizations just kind of lower their standards. Like, well, this is just how it is here. And that becomes the reality. So people stop speaking up about their problems. They stop expecting things to improve. And you get this culture of resignation that makes meaningful change harder. And, you really lose the energy and optimism that you need to have a thriving organization. So, I think for HR leaders, business leaders, like the question is, what is the cost of not investing in well-being? And you're either paying on the front end to build resilience and sustainability, or you're paying on the back end in fragmented, expensive ways.
So let's say an audience member is tuning into this episode and they have that pit in their stomach, knowing, like you said, their colleagues or their teammates are struggling because, like you said, you feel it, you see it, you experience it yourself, and often maybe you're feeling the same way. So, and let's say you're that person in the workplace who doesn't feel like they don't have a lot of power in their situation to create change. I know there are some days where maybe I feel like, oh, I don't have enough, power to move mountains, but is it possible for anyone, regardless of their role in the organization, to influence that workplace culture and advocate for that change?
So I would say absolutely yes. And individuals can help shift workplace culture. And it's really empowering to know this. Like, obviously, folks in authority have a bigger lever to push, but anybody can influence their culture and their microculture. And the reason that's true is that culture doesn't exist separately from the people who are in it. It's created moment to moment. It's created by how individuals interact with each other, what behaviors get modeled. That is really important. And what becomes normalized through repetition. So every employee is participating in creating culture, whether they realize it or not. You have what I would call a microculture in your team. So your colleagues, your one-to-ones, your project groups. If you can consistently bring presence and calm to your meetings, ask thoughtful questions instead of reactive questions, openly acknowledge mistakes, you're modeling behaviors that others can mirror. And culture change frequently starts in these little pockets. I like the term positive deviance. I don't know who started that, but that term is, I think, is really helpful. So start doing things differently, like take your lunch away from your desk.
Yes.
Set boundaries. Set boundaries about after-hours communication, right? Start single tasking instead of multitasking, and make these behaviors visible so that others start to see them and start to recognize, okay, it's possible for things to be different. Now, of course, advocating with folks who have authority is also, I think, an important part. The languaging is important and you have to be strategic, but you can, start with experiments,
Right.
like not mandates. Start with asking for small change, not big change. Instead of saying, we need to be more mindful, which is something I might say, uh, you could say, golly, I think our burnout issue might be connected to how we're working. What if we tried this, and then come up with something simple that can be tried or integrated? And, people are more receptive to that language. Uh, my unit would like to experiment with a small pilot. Do you think maybe a mindfulness training? My unit would like to try a mindfulness training. Do you think something like that would be possible?
I love that you brought that up. And so I'd love to get into how employees can build a case for well-being that could positively impact their organization. But first, let's take a quick pause for a brief message about some exciting bonus content for this episode. Hey everyone, we'll get right back to the conversation, but first, for sure members tuning in, we have an exclusive resource to share. Earlier in the episode, I mentioned data from the 2026 State of the Workplace report by SHRM. That insight was just one small piece of this comprehensive report, which is packed with information and strategies for tackling today's challenges and informs how you can shape a future of adaptability, foresight, and employee well being. If you're watching on YouTube, just simply click the link above for instant access or find the link in this episode's description. This is just one of the many advantages of being a SHRM member, so be sure to make the most of this valuable resource. All right, now back to the episode. So, Holly, you mentioned so much about mindfulness, but let's define it a little bit more, and specifically, what distinguishes evidence-based approaches from more of those general wellness workplace initiatives?
Interesting question. There are so many wellness initiatives. A lot of them aren't evidence based, and uh, a lot of them it's hard to get employees engaged in. Like there's not a lot of acceptance and uptake. So, first of all, I'm going to take a tiny step backwards and define mindfulness. I talk about mindfulness so much, I forget that some people have never heard of it. So, when I'm talking about mindfulness, what I'm talking about is this capacity that anybody can learn. So, that's what's really important. It's a capacity that all of us can develop. And it's this capacity to stay really present in the moment, focused on just the task at hand. That means I'm not worrying about what I'm going to have to do later or all the things on my to-do list. I'm not constantly replaying something that already happened. Oh, that email I sent, I can't believe I did. Or what I said in the meeting, I can't believe I said that. Or what that person said to me, that sort of unhelpful rehashing. That causes stress. Worrying about what's coming in the future causes stress. So mindfulness is just this capacity to kind of settle in, be present in the moment. But what's really important is bringing with that presence this quality of kind curiosity. Like, I'm here. It's good. Let's see what's happening. Our culture is an anti-mindfulness culture. We're all about multitasking, doing all these different things. But it is so interesting, just a little bit of practice, a few minutes a day, people can really shift, learn to be grounded, present, curious, interested. And when they do that, there is so much data that many things change, many things that affect the individual personally. But what's important for employers to know is that if your managers and your workforce are able to experience these changes, it's going to benefit the organization.
It reminds me of, the meditation apps like Headspace or Calm. I know I've downloaded a few of them, and a lot of what it tells you in just like a 3-minute exercise is maybe the box breathing, the feeling the ground underneath your feet, or feeling your hands along the chair you're sitting in to bring you into that present moment of your physical body. And that slows your mind down to, like you said, respond not react. And I was just curious if that's kind of like the small ways maybe the individual in their personal life can, be more mindful or create mindfulness so that it translates well into the workplace.
That's exactly right. And so you just mentioned one of the really great strategies and supports for starting to learn to be more mindfulness in your own life. So there's all these apps. There's great apps, Headspace, Calm. You mentioned another one, and they are really helpful. Now, I will say that uh, those apps are great, and when people use them, they are incredibly helpful. There's so much data about that. And also the uh, the uptake and utilization of those apps over time for long numbers of people is not as high as I would like it to be. And the research that we've done in our organization and is supported in other places is, and this is important for folks thinking about their workplace.
Right.
If you just give people an app and tell them to do it, the vast majority of them won't do it, or they'll do it once or twice.
No, it's like a
What
New
makes a
Year's
huge
resolution.
Yes, but what makes a huge difference is if you have a live teacher
Yeah.
who is working with a relatively small team, and over the course of several weeks that their teacher is meeting with the team, helping them, supporting them, checking in with them between meetings. The group develops this dynamic of accountability and support. They talk about how it's helping them. They talk about, well, this is how I'm working it into my day. This is how I'm remembering to do it. This is what I've discovered. The teacher pulls them along, brings them along, supports them. So I love those apps. And also, it makes a huge difference if an organization can create an opportunity for there to be a live human supporting the workers or leaders to work in groups together to learn these skills. Because that's a really important thing about mindfulness compared to a lot of other wellness initiatives. We're talking about learning skills that you have in your pocket and you actually use them day after day after day to manage difficult situations at work.
And yeah, I love that because it makes me think of, like the physical, like the workout YouTube videos. You're not going to have a trainer or anybody there to really motivate you. And eventually, if you're like me, you're going to get the yoga mat, you're going to get a couple weights at home, I'm going to do this workout program. And then nobody's really pushing you, nobody's really watching you go through it. And you kind of just go, oh, but I could just take a nap instead. And so you gotta exercise your mindfulness like you're exercising your physical body, and sometimes it takes a coach. Sometimes it takes somebody who maybe is used to doing this who can motivate you a little bit more. Some YouTube videos, some apps can be helpful, but for in the long term, would you say this is kind of part of like what you talked about? Would you say is part of the curriculum you developed for evidence-based mindfulness? That we mentioned it earlier, but is that kind of what the curriculum entails? Can you tell us more about that part?
Yeah. And so my journey with this has been really interesting and very long, and I've learned so much. And it is actually translated into a really effective curriculum. So if we can take a moment into my backstory. So I'm a psychiatrist, which you mentioned at the beginning, and I worked for many years at the Duke Student Counseling Center. So I was working with college students. And I myself have been a mindfulness and meditation practitioner for many years. When I started learning mindfulness, one of the thoughts that kept popping into my head over and over was, why didn't anyone teach me this when I was a medical student? Like, this would have been so useful. How come nobody taught me this when I was a medical student? Because, it's really super stressful being a medical student and a medical resident. Healthcare has some of the highest burnout rates in the industry, right? So not surprising. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to teach mindfulness to all these Duke students, and we're not even going to need a counseling center anymore because we're just going to change everything. Well, guess what? That didn't work because I didn't know how to teach them. I didn't know like I couldn't just tell them about it and they would go do it. I also couldn't learn the way I had learned, which was a more like traditional contemplative practice way, which was sit still for an hour. And even if you want to get up and you feel like your hair's on fire, don't. Well, I will tell you, college students, they were not going to do that,
No.
right? No. So I spent years trying different things, trying to figure out, well, how do you teach college students mindfulness? Turns out there is a way. I feel a little bit dense because, I was an expert in college student mental health. It took me years to figure out. But we ended up creating a curriculum that is extremely popular and effective with students. It's been researched over and over. It's now taught in 300 campuses around the world, all the Ivy Leagues, many of the big state schools. It's like the gold standard for getting very busy young adults to learn mindfulness. Well, this, of course, transitions to the work world too, right? You've got very busy workers. They don't have a lot of time. They're not going to sit still for 45 minutes, whether they want to or not, right? It's just not going to work. So the things that turned out to be critical for getting busy people to stick with mindfulness was, one, having a teacher who cared. Two, doing it in groups of around 15 to 20 people. If you try and teach 100 people mindfulness, there's no glue, there's no connection, there's no conversation. If it's only 1 or 2 people, there's not enough accountability and glue. So we found putting people in small groups with a teacher that cared for only 4 weeks. Like, it doesn't take that long.
Mm-hmm.
And then importantly, we asked, we coached, we invited, we coddled, we cajoled people into meditating around 10 minutes a day. And at the end of those 4 weeks, the data was they were transformed. Their stress was much reduced. They were sleeping better. They were more mindful. They had more self-compassion. What those things translate into the work environment is decreased burnout, which increases employee engagement considerably, employee health, happiness, productivity. And there's a fair amount of interesting data that if in workplaces where mindfulness has been introduced and engaged, they measure the intention to quit, which I think is really interesting. There's an instrument that measures how likely are my employees to quit because they're so burnt out and unhappy. And intention to quit goes way down when you start teaching your employees about mindfulness. So our data, our experience says it is more high touch, but it works. Like, you could spend $1 gazillion buying apps on mindfulness. And I'm not dissing the apps. I'm really not. But I'm just saying, I think they're great. I listen to them. I use them. But if you don't have a way to get people feeling like, this is important, I want to do it. My buddies are doing it. My colleagues are doing it. My manager is doing it with me. And here's a teacher who, wow, they really know what they're talking about. And when I have a problem with it, they're like, hey, that's really normal. I can help you with that. Because people have the same problems. Like, and you've tried it.
Mm-hmm.
You've tried mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And you found probably that it's really frustrating at first. Your mind really wanders. You're not sure it's helping.
Oh yeah,
Like,
the box breathing. I'm like, this isn't working for me. I don't know what this is. I feel like my heart's pounding faster, and then the more I did it, the more in control I felt. And honestly, and I was raised by a medical professional. My parent is in that field, and I was always taught how it changes your brain chemistry. It goes down to the scientific level of how your brain is operating, and I always found that fascinating, and I always found a power in that kind of control of yourself.
right. I'm so glad you brought that up, Anne, because, I'm a psychiatrist, so I'm really interested in the neurophysiology of this. And with these types of mental trainings, we're really talking about retraining your nervous system, regulating your nervous system. And I think, our nervous system is the most complicated system, but it can be trained just like your cardiovascular system and your muscular system, right? If you lift weights, you're going to get stronger. If you run, your cardiovascular systems get stronger. If you do this mental training just a few minutes a day, your nervous system is going to regulate, it's going to calm. You're going to have control over it. You're going to be able to respond and not react. You're not going to be so easily triggered. You're going to know how to take a breath.
So I'd love to wrap up with some simple steps our audience can take away today. Let's get some practical steps with some frameworks that, everybody can integrate to start advocating for that cultural shift we mentioned earlier. So could you walk us through your top 3 practical mindfulness exercises people can use today or tomorrow, the day after, in different scenarios, especially during a stressful workday?
I love this question because I think it's really important that people know even just little tiny things can be helpful. So, a few ideas. There's a very popular acronym, I guess, called STOP. So, stop what you're doing. The S is just stop what you're doing. The T, take 3 conscious breaths. Just slowing down and counting 3 breaths. Oh my gosh, regulates your nervous system. Then observe what you're noticing. That's the O. Tension in your chest, my thoughts are racing, an urge to fire off an unhelpful email. And then proceed with intention. So stop. Stop what you're doing, take some breaths, observe what you're noticing, and then proceed. Takes 30 seconds, but it creates that space we were talking about between stimulus and response. Really helpful before you hit send on that email.
Oh, yeah. And when you said take a deep breath, or I literally breathed in when you said that. I
Yep.
took a deep breath when you told me to.
Hey, just remembering to take a conscious breath. I won't go too much into the neurophysiology of that, but that activates your calming nervous system. So if we just stop and take a deep breath, our stress hormones drop. So just do that. That's just remember to do that. Okay, another thing that is really helpful is this sensory grounding. So when your mind is spinning, it's really helpful to just ground in your senses. So notice 5 things using your senses right now, like what can you see? What can you hear? What can you feel or smell? And be specific. I hear the hum of the ventilation system. I feel the weight of my feet on the floor. I feel the cool smoothness of my water bottle. So 5 of them, go through 5 of them. And this pulls you out of the thought spiral and into your direct experience. Remember, mindfulness is about being engaged in your present moment experience. The number 1 easy, quickest way to get out of your head is to get into your physical senses. What are my fingers touching? What do I see? What do I hear? So 5 things, takes less than a minute. And then another super simple thing is to set your timer to go off every hour, every 45 minutes, every 90 minutes if you're a super focuser. And when it goes off, just take a minute, stand up, stretch, scan your awareness through your body. Are you clenching your jaw? Are your shoulders too tight? Take a few breaths and then go back to it. Just set a timer, take a minute break over and over throughout the day. It makes a difference because you're checking in, you're reducing tension, you're taking those breaths. And you may notice you're less tired at the end of the day because you don't spend the whole day like this. It takes a lot of energy to spend the whole day with every muscle contracted in your body.
Exactly.
So it's let's relax. Let's just relax. So those are 3 simple things. And then the only thing I would add is if you're a manager, you have so much influence to model things differently. And you don't have to be a mindfulness teacher. You don't even have to say the word mindfulness. But you can say, okay, before this meeting starts, let's just take 30 seconds to go from getting here to being here. Maybe everybody take a couple deep breaths. Such beautiful modeling. The other thing you can model is single tasking. So there's so much research on multitasking. We multitask to become more efficient. All the research on multitasking says it makes us less efficient. We make more errors, things take longer, and we're more stressed. So create some agreements that we're just going to be single focused. We're going to close our laptops during meetings, during our one-to-ones, no phones. We're going to put time on our calendar that's just single focus time where we just work on a project that we can really get into it. So managers can just do these simple things and start to create that opportunity for presence and slowing things down. And in the long run, they're going to feel better, their teams are going to feel better, and their businesses are going to be more productive.
I feel like I just listened to one of the apps. Like you were wonderful, and that was just such a great conversation. Thank you so much for walking us through such concrete steps people can take, to just make a whole difference, not just in their day, in their relationships, in their career, in their environment. It really is going to make a huge impact. I'm going to remember the STOP acronym and try to do that as well myself. So thank you so much, Holly, for sharing your thoughts today and your guidance. I really hope our audience walks away feeling more mindful with themselves. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Anna. It was fun chatting with you.
All right. That's all for this week. We'll catch you next time. If you enjoyed our conversation today, be sure to subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcast so you never miss a new episode. Also, did you know All Things Work is more than a podcast? That's right, we're also a weekly newsletter that includes in-depth articles and the latest research from SHRM to keep you in the know. Just head to shrm.org/allthingswork to sign up. Plus, follow SHRM on social media to view the latest clips and join the conversation on game-changing topics that are redefining the world of work.
SHRM.